Hello and welcome. I'm really excited to have you join me this evening. I'm Rachel Downey. I'm from Tasmania, Australia, and I'm going to share a few parenting tips with you this evening and try and take the frustration out of parenting for you. So I'll give you a bit of a background about myself. I've been a teacher for 15 years and a mindset coach for the last 8, and I have 4 children of my own who are 6, 8, 10 and 12, and my husband and I run a dairy farm as well. So obviously for me, going into having 4 children, I actually had no idea what I was doing. So I did lots of research and I had some really tough times, and I'd love to be able to help any parent through that time. So I'm just giving a short presentation this evening to see if I could, to share my knowledge and help you with anything I can. If you've got any questions at the end, we'll allow some time for that as well. So I'm just going to get my screen up and start the presentation. So we're going to have a look at how to take the frustration out of parenting. And, the reality is that, we've got the most important job in the entire world, and we receive no education and no training in it. So I'm just going to get straight into it and start with this quote by Dorothy Law. If a child lives with security, he learns to have faith in himself. If a child lives with acceptance, he learns to love. If a child lives with recognition, he learns to have a goal. And if a child lives with approval, he learns to like himself. If a child lives with friendliness, he learns that the world is a nice place to live. If a child lives with criticism, he learns to condemn. If a child lives with hostility, he learns to fight. If a child lives with fear, he learns to be apprehensive. If a child lives with pity, he learns to feel sorry for himself. And if a child lives with jealousy, he learns to feel guilty. So therefore, if a child lives with security, he learns to have faith in himself. So let's have a look at why parenting can really be so difficult. So I've got lots of notes here I want to share with you tonight. So let's get into it. If you're like me, you could not find the instruction manual on your child when they were born. Where was the off switch when you wanted to go to sleep, right? And if you're like me, you don't have time to sit down and read every parenting book available under the sun. You want an instant fix, right? So I'm going to give you some really simple, quick and practical steps for you that I hope that can make your parenting easier. How does that sound? Do you ever feel alone in the parenting of your children? And do you ever wonder why it feels that all parents are talking about or having the same problems with their children? Or do you wonder why it's only you whose child is not doing what you want them to do? The journey of parenting can be a lonely one at times, and we're expected to cope with the everyday difficulties that we face as parents with little knowledge of how to do it. We sometimes don't know where to go for help or even how to ask for it, and we just battle it out on our own. And too often we are parenting in isolation and don't have the support around us that we really need. So if you're like me and have turned to the internet for help by typing your parenting problem into Google, you can come up with a phenomenal number of responses. And then you've got to sift through it all, find out what matches your problem, your need, and it can be really overwhelming. And when you can't find a solution you need, it can actually be a really big waste of your time that you don't have. So would you like to hear that parenting your child can be much easier with a few simple steps? And would you like to hear how you can change your way of thinking and how you respond to your child? Would your life be much easier if you were able to be less frustrated with your child? Yeah, absolutely. What I'd like to do is help you create a better relationship between your child and yourself so that your everyday life is easier. I'm offering you a changing mindset of how to parent your children or child. I want to minimize the pain for you, the parent. That overwhelming feeling of not being able to cope, of being so frustrated and angry that you don't know where to turn, that feeling of being totally out of control. When you look in the mirror at 5:30 at night, you would not recognize that person staring back at you, right? I want to minimize the pain that children go through too when this frustrated parent appears and all reason goes out of the window. So many children and parents are struggling with the lack of relationships, the lack of connection with one another, and they're just going through the motions every day. It's wake up, get the kids up, get dressed, make beds, have breakfast, wash face, clean teeth, get in the car, drop off at school, go to work, go through the motions at work, pick up the kids, do sport, come home, cook dinner, watch some television and go to bed. And you know what? You get up the next day and you do it all again. I wanted something different for myself and my children. I wanted to be less frustrated. I wanted to have more energy, or actually be lots of fun to be around and enjoy the time that I spent with my children. So why do we get frustrated and why do our children trigger it? Frustration is an emotion that's really closely linked with anger. And if you observe your body when you're frustrated, what happens? That's right. You clench your body, you tense your jaw and hold your breath. What's going on for you in that moment is that you're holding back from saying something, or you feel like something is actually out of your control, or you feel powerless. Basically, you don't actually like what's happening for you. Does this ring true? Can you recognize this description of feeling frustrated and what it means? Or is there something more there for you? It might actually be worth checking in with yourself now and taking yourself back to the moments when you were frustrated. Notice what was happening for you in your body. Notice what was happening for you in your mind. What thoughts were you having? What did you want to say? Having an understanding of your body and how your mind reacts when you're frustrated is actually the first step in learning how to let it go. I'm not asking you to present yourself from being frustrated. I'm asking you to get yourself a sense of understanding of what it actually feels like for you. So in your parenting, start to notice when you get the most frustrated. What is it that really pushes your buttons? Think about that right now. What is it that really gets up your nose and aggravates you to the absolute maximum and gets you to like 11 out of 10 on the scale? And maybe something really simple, like clothes left on the floor. It could be the lid left off the milk. It could be your children fighting and squabbling and whinging, at whatever age they are. But whatever it is, work out what that button is for you. And what I'd like you to do is practice. Catch yourself in the moment. That's right. When you feel yourself getting really frustrated, notice what's going on for you and find out exactly what it is that triggered it. See if it's the same next time. Does it happen at a certain time of the week, certain time of the day? Are you more likely to get frustrated in the morning, the evening? The timing doesn't matter. And it could be that it's more likely to be one child than the other. I can almost guarantee that that's actually going to be the case. Are you more likely going to get frustrated when you're running late, when you're under pressure? This can also be a great exercise to do with your partner as well if they're willing. Find out what pushes each other's frustration buttons. And not only will this be great for you as parents, but also as partners. And the aim is not to push each other's buttons on purpose. The aim is for you to share them with one another so that you can support one another in those moments. And by having this knowledge and understanding of your frustration, you're going to be more able to be in control of it, to diffuse it and let it go. And this will be one of the biggest changes in your life that will make parenting easier for you. You're going to notice a vast difference in your approach and enjoyment to parenting by minimizing the frustration that you feel. So then it leads into helping your child with his or her frustration. And having this knowledge allows you to be able to help them. And this becomes from personal experience for myself. One of my children used to get incredibly frustrated and it would trigger my frustration through the roof. And this didn't help either of us. And we were just frustrating each other's, basically feeding each other's frustration and making it worse. And I'm talking about a 5-year-old child who was pressing the buttons of a 36-year-old adult at that time, doing that frustration dance. Literally, who's meant to be the adult? Me, right? And I can certainly tell you that in that frustration moment, you probably couldn't tell the difference between who was the adult and who was the child. And I know that my husband can vouch for that. So he could see the effect that my frustration and my responses were having on our child and the things that needed to change. So in teaching my child about frustration, I was also on a steep learning curve myself. At this age, we've been teaching our children about emotions, and they all had a pretty clear understanding about anger. And as I mentioned earlier, frustration is pretty closely linked with anger. And we've got similar body reactions. And they're both things linked with us not getting what it is that we want. We hold things in. So when we're dealing with frustration with our children, we tend to interchange between frustration and anger. So with younger children, I also talk with them about anger. So one of the first things that I learned about anger, which I'm going to explore later with you, is that it actually needs to be expressed. So with my child, we talked about anger and what it was and where she felt it in her body. And at this age, at the really young age, children are really quick to pick up their feelings. And if you discuss it with them, they can tell you readily what's going on for them. And our child was able to say where the anger was for her in her body, and it was big and it felt like it was getting bigger. She was also able to give the emotion a colour, and she chose red. And it seemed that any little thing could trigger her anger. And as a parent, I had absolutely no idea what that was. But she would fly off the handle at a passing comment. That anger and frustration would become all-consuming for her. And we actually really talked about releasing the anger from her body, and it was good for her to do. Both my husband and I had trained as life coaches, so we had a really strong understanding about emotions, but it needs to be expressed in a way that was safe for her and others around her, furniture, people included. And I'll expand further on that in another webinar down the track. But most importantly, she was able to recognise herself getting angry. And this didn't happen overnight, mind you, but she became in charge of her emotions rather than her emotions being in charge of her. So she was able to remove herself from a room if she got angry or frustrated. And when she'd gone too far, she came back and apologised. Now, seriously, this did not happen overnight. We did do a lot of work with her around this. And we encouraged her to say what it was that she wanted and to speak up and ask and speak about how she actually felt. And I myself learned a really huge lesson here as a parent. Having sought understanding of frustration and anger for myself, I was actually able to help my child, which in turn helped me. This actually became a really huge pivotal point, not only in our relationship, but in our parenting. So my child then was 5, she's now 10. And my parenting is so much easier and stress-free since I've been able to understand my own frustrations and help my children understand theirs. So taking the time to do this with yourself and your child is going to produce similar results. By making minor changes in the way that you respond rather than react, changes the dance and the outcome for you. By teaching them what you've learned and shared, you're going to have, even though you've got similar problems, that being honest with each other really aids them in their understanding and personal growth. And I can guarantee you that getting on top of frustration will make your parenting life easier, because the frustration causes resistance, and that wastes so much of your energy. Just learn to let it go. Remember who the adult is, and you can make a lot of difference in your life and your children just by teaching them about frustration and choosing not to react. And remember that you've got a choice. The focus is you're wanting to make your parenting easier. So what do you want and what do you need to do? And this leads into understanding the emotions, okay? And you know that these can change instantly with a child and actually learning how to express them. So why is learning about emotions going to help you in your parenting? Having the knowledge and understanding of these emotions will help you be more aware of your feelings and of your child's feelings. You're going to become more perceptive about what it is that your child's actually feeling and how you're going to be able to support them and help them through their lives. I'm just going to have a quick drink. Hang on. So emotions, what are they? Emotions are actually energy in motion. Emotions are feelings. You've got a lot of emotions that you express, and the common ones that people feel are joy, fear, anger, sadness, excitement, embarrassment, and love. And extensive research has been done on these emotions, and there's plenty of great books out there that you can learn from. Through my training, though, I learned that you can't think and feel at the same time. I don't know about you, but I found this a really difficult concept to fathom. What does that actually mean? okay? So a perfect example is to demonstrate this is when I get angry, right? There is no thinking at all happening when I get angry. All thought processes go out the window. The only thing that happens for me when I'm angry is anger, right? The other interesting thing about emotions is that they're temporary. They're continually coming and going. You know, how long do you stay angry for? How long do you stay happy? The emotions can change like that in a second. You can be laughing one moment and feeling sad the next. So sometimes people express these emotions that at times might not actually be suitable, you know. So they explode at their partners for something as minor as leaving the lid off the toothpaste, leaving clothes on the floor, or verbally abusing a person at the other end of the telephone, right? The toothpaste lid and many other trivial incidents can be called triggers for our emotions. So something can happen during the day that provides the opportunity to express the emotion that you've been holding in or repressing. And a good example of this is actually watching a movie on television and you start to cry, and that provides an outlet for us to release our sadness, okay? So some people, as we know, they're not good at expressing their emotions. They never get sad, they never get angry, and they repress them. And that's not what I wanted for my children. I wanted them to be able to develop their emotional intelligence, and I wanted them to be able to express their emotions and understand what they are in a creative and respectful way. So as I said, there's lots of books that have been written about emotional intelligence and how important it is to teach your children about emotions. But as adults and parents, it's just as important for us to have that understanding as well. Why? You know, having this understanding and choice about your emotions actually provides you with freedom. And emotional intelligence is the ability to recognize how you are feeling, the ability to adjust these feelings, and the ability to recognize these feelings in others. Can you see how having that knowledge would be of benefit to you? Being emotionally intelligent provides you with that choice. Having emotional intelligence as a parent is a sure guarantee that you can make your parenting life easier and way more enjoyable. So there's 6 main emotions: joy, sadness, excitement, fear, love, and anger. And I'm going to go into these later again in another webinar in the future, but I'm going to go through a little bit of stuff that's going to help you tonight, okay? So when you experience these emotions, you've got different responses in your body, and you feel these emotions in different places. Having knowledge and understanding of that gives you a greater awareness of what you are feeling and what your responses could be. So when you're equipped with this knowledge as parents, you're going to be able to teach your children about emotions. And you then have a greater understanding of how they're feeling and what you can do to help them. So let's move into how you can make your parenting easier, the bigger picture. It's not only children who grow, parents do too. As much as we watch to see, this is just a quote, as much as we watch to see what our children will do with their lives, they're watching to see what we do with ours. I can't tell my children to reach for the sun. All I can do is reach for it myself. And that's from Joyce Maynard. So I'm going to share with you a little tip that's going to change the way you parent forever and profoundly impact your life in a truly positive way. The most exciting thing about this is that it's all in your control, and you're going to be able to make these changes. And when you make these changes, you're going to find that your parenting has a natural flow to it. You're more accepting and more understanding of yourself and your children. So these are the gap, the awareness, and creating a parenting vision. And I made the realization that this feeling of being out of control and being frustrated, really, it just had to stop. I didn't like the person that I was turning into, the parent that I was being, and the effect that it was having on my children. I was crushing my daughter's spirit with my frustration. I was the adult, and I had to find a better way, because literally I was responsible for my own behaviour. And if things were going to change, I needed to make the changes with myself first. So what I want to share with you is the gap. And I still remember the first day that I learned about it. For me, it was an incredibly profound moment where I realised I had control over how I responded. I was about 26, and I only wish I'd learned about it earlier, as I reckon it would have saved me a phenomenal amount of angst in my life and wasted energy. And to me, this is the greatest secret of all time. And as I said, look, as a child, I really wish I'd known about the gap as well and the control that it gives you. And I didn't realize how out of control I was in so many areas of my life until I learned about it. I wasn't aware of the power and the level of self-control that using the gap gives you. Taking a breath and pausing. Something so small and simple can have an amazing result. So, what's the gap? Quite simply, it's a pause. That's right, a simple pause. So you have a stimulus, which could be somebody speaking to you or a child, and instead of responding, you actually pause. And know that you've got the ability to choose how you respond rather than react. So responsible, that word is response-able, which means that you are able to choose your own response. So I generally refer to the gap when teaching it to children as taking a deep breath and not saying anything at all. So try this for yourself right now. Take a deep breath in, counting from 1 to 5, and then slowly let it out. And as you do, feel your shoulders and chest rise and then let go and relax. Observe what happens to your head. Can you feel tightness, clenching, pressure, anything? I notice that when I get really frustrated, I tend to clench my body, hold my breath. I feel like I've got vice grips around the side of my head. I feel like I'm about to physically explode, right? But putting in the gap and taking a breath allows for expansion and for me to release these constrictions. So you may have noticed that you've got a similar response or something different, but whatever you feel is your experience. But this gap has saved my children and my husband from my wrath on many occasions. But it's interesting, isn't it, that the people whom we love the most are the ones that we treat the worst, and we let it all out. There are times where a pause, though, and my taking a breath is just not long enough. And I need to keep taking breaths and not say anything or actually leave the room. So it's been well heard of in our house that, even though the children have a timeout place in the house, that I've gone and sat on the bottom step as well. Because the reality is the gap stops me from saying or doing something that's going to hurt another person, which is in this instance either my child or my husband. So that gap allows you to bring yourself back to the present moment, to be conscious of your surroundings. And the gap helps you minimize and eliminate those overwhelming feelings of frustration that just take over in an instant and hijack your body and mind. And it can replace that feeling of frustration with a sense of calm and order, particularly when used regularly. So imagine places where you could use putting in the gap right now. Imagine times when you put in a gap, how different the outcome would have been. Would it have been different? How would you have responded instead? Would things have escalated out of all proportion? How hurt would your child have been? And then what regret would you have felt later? So think of a time with your child where you've been totally out of control with how you've responded to something. For example, spilled milk. What was your response? Was it a realistic one? Compare spilled milk with biting a sibling or running a bike into your car. Give them a rating out of 10. Where would each incident be? Like the milk, maybe a 2 out of 10, biting an 8 out of 10, or bike 9 out of 10. What level of frustration do you respond with to the spilled milk? Is it the same? Would your child get a 10 out of 10 for your frustration? And by breaking down these incidents down and looking at them realistically from the outside in, how do you think you'd respond to spilled milk in the future, particularly if you use the gap as well? In the Hagakure, the book of the samurai, there's a virtue that states, in the words of the ancients, one should make his decision within the space of 7 breaths. If you manage to make the gap as long as 7 breaths, how do you think things would turn out differently for both you and your child? So let's have a look. What is the result of the gap for you, the parent? It allows time for composure. It allows time for feelings that have come up to recognize for what they actually are, i.e., is this situation making me angry? Is this about my child at all, or am I putting my stuff onto them? It puts distance between the incident and the response, and it provides time for you to check in with what you're feeling. It allows time for you to react on your responses. Is this fair? But it also minimizes the hurt that you may take out on your child through frustration. It keeps the issue to this one incident instead of you bringing up lots of other things. In choosing a gap, you can go to another room and calm down, take a couple of breaths. But if you're in the car, choosing not to speak might be what's actually required. And acknowledge that your child can aid in this process as well. Like right now, I'm choosing not to respond. I'm just going to take some time out, and then when I'm ready, I'll speak to you. And sometimes the child will push you. The first times when you do this, the aim is not to respond and create that gap. So with children, practice. Children recognize what you're doing and know that it benefits them for you when they do that. When they allow you to take this time. So that's the benefits for you. What's the result of the gap for your child? They've got a moment to think about what's just happened. It also provides space for them to calm down, and again puts distance between you and them. You're going to be calmer in dealing with the behaviour, but the outcome could actually be quite different. Putting in that gap has been brilliant for changing the way that I parent. It's made a huge difference in the way I handle myself and my children, and it's also been great for my children to do this, to see me doing this. They can actually now personally recognise that they need to take that gap. And quite regularly, one of our children recognised that she becomes really angry and she's removed herself from the room to calm down. When she comes back, she quite often says, "I'm ready to listen now," or "I'm sorry for my behaviour." And recognising this need in children to take this time out is just as important as it is for us to take that time out. And by checking in with our emotions and our children's, we're more able to deal with our parenting in a way that's positive, rather than doing something that we're going to regret, feel guilty about, or hurt us or even hurt our children. So I liken this gap to being that you're able to unhook from all your frustrations and worries. And doing this allows you to focus just on that one incident that's occurred and deal with that accordingly. And it limits all the other emotional baggage from rearing its head where it doesn't belong. So to summarise the gap, it's a pause, a form of breath, no speaking, and if necessary, it can be a number of breaths. But it can involve you leaving the room to calm down as well, stating you're not ready to deal with that behaviour right now, but you will return to it. And I teach the gap to not only parents and clients, but to their children and mine, and have had incredible results. It also minimises the stress that you place on yourself and gives you a chance to regroup and respond in a proactive way. So in looking at that, there's the gap, but I've got a pyramid and I've also got an oxygen mask here, and I'm sure you've been looking at that at the same time going, well, what does that mean? So the pyramid is something that I really want you to imagine as a mum, and this is really particular for a mum, okay? So really, at times, you can be totally overwhelmed. So what I want you to do is imagine that pyramid turned upside down, okay? And you're standing underneath that pyramid holding it up. That is generally how we deal with stuff. Everything is on top of us. We're totally overwhelmed. We have got so much going on and we're doing the juggle. But what I want to teach, you as a mum is, and even a dad, if you're doing this all on your own, is actually turn that pyramid upside down so that at the top of it is you, and that's that little gold piece. How do you do that? It actually means learning to put yourself first. Now, I know there are so many people out there as parents who don't do that. And they put themselves at the bottom of the pile. But the reality is that you need to look after yourself first. Looking at the oxygen mask on a plane, all the flight attendants say to you, look after yourself first, put the oxygen mask on yourself, and then put the oxygen mask on the child. Okay, look after yourself first. So that can look in totally different ways for a range of people. Some people means that they need to exercise or that they need to go for a walk each day. Some people need a massage. Some people need to just be able to sit down and have a cup of tea, 5 minutes, or be able to read a book, chat to a friend, whatever it is. know that you need to feed yourself and make sure that you're okay, so that then you will have less frustration. You've got less resistance because your needs are being met. It's when your needs aren't being met that you get resentment, and the resistance and the frustration builds up. So I just wanted to check in with you if you've got any questions or answers. What I'm going to do is minimize this slide. Hi, how you doing, Sam? And see if you had any questions.
I don't have any questions, but I can completely when you were talking about your son, your 5-year-old, just getting really frustrated with him, that is just completely me at the minute with my 5-year-old. He's exactly the same, and sometimes I think to myself, who is the 5-year-old and who is the mum? That is me at the moment, completely me.
Right, okay. So it's really great that aligned with you, and hopefully can give you some tips, but also congratulations on that beautiful little baby too.
Oh, thank you.
That's so exciting for you.
Yeah.
I'm just going to